Get going. Right. Good stuff. Morning, everybody. I bet you're all thinking, right, how's he going to tackle this one then? My work experience has been cancelled or postponed. What are you going to come up with here to Alex to solve this little conundrum? Yeah, really difficult for all schools that are running that work experience, but I think it's definitely worth looking at Gatsby Benchmark 6 in a bit of detail to see what we can do. Both, I suppose, during COVID, with social distancing is likely to be around for some time, and also when we get back to some sort of normality as well. So just a bit of housekeeping to start with. I've got glamorous assistant Debbie, who's going to be looking after the chat. So if anybody has got any questions, just fire them into there. We can either pick them up throughout or at the end. The slides will get sent out afterwards. There are some notes on there that I won't necessarily refer to during the presentation, just simply for time, but there are some additional notes, my thoughts added into that. In terms of a structure, really it's all about trying to generate ideas today. I want you to have a think about your own school, your own institution, how potentially you might start to tackle this in September, and also give you some resources to look at to hopefully generate some ideas as well. I want you to just take something away that you can implement. That's the main aim of today. If you can take one thing from the presentation today that you can kind of put into place, either with the support of your enterprise coordinators, so myself, Debbie and Liz, I'll be happy with that. So if you can take something away, that would be great. In terms of a structure, we're going to look at a little bit of context. So what does Lincolnshire look like at the moment or before COVID? How is Lincolnshire performing against Gatsby Benchmark 6? Briefly look at the challenges. I think we're all kind of aware of those challenges, but I think it's important to look at those a little bit. And then we're going to work through a bit of a scenario. And we're really going to just drill down into this one benchmark and almost treat it as it's on its own. Look at a bit of a scenario, we'll look at intent, implementation and impact, and really try and break down the benchmark into what it means. And we'll look at some resources as well and what some schools are doing to try and meet this benchmark as well. Okay, so worth quickly looking at the benchmark. I think we're all aware of what it is, what it means. But one thing I would sort of allude to here is that I know a lot of schools strive to deliver that work experience in that 1 week block, but it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be a work experience block. And I know there are so many challenges with work experience in its traditional guise. So hopefully today we'll look at some other options that might be available to you that you can put in place within your schools. I think we all strive to have that work experience, and one of the schools that I work with, we did a survey with students, and it was evident from that work experience week that they value that so much. But not every school can deliver that for the resources that it costs, and for a number of other reasons. So how else can we meet this benchmark without delivering that work experience? And that's kind of hopefully what we'll look at a bit today. So first of all, look a bit of context really. What does Lincolnshire look like against Gatsby Benchmark 6? So here's a bit of a slide really. So I just caveat this with percentage of schools that we work with. So if you've signed a memorandum, I can't even say that, I'll say MOU because that's what it is. An MOU with myself, Debbie or Liz, that means that you're part of the Enterprise Advisor Network and we can count you against these figures. So generally strong performance on 5. Which is really positive. Getting employers into your institutions is generally pretty good. But as you can see from 6, there's only a really small proportion of schools that we're working with at the moment that are achieving it. And again, partially achieving 6 as well. So how do we encourage, and this is a job for myself, Debbie and Liz, but hopefully with your support as well, how do we encourage schools to take students out of the classroom and get that experience of the workplace? So a little bit about challenges. I think, as I say, I think we're all kind of aware of these to some extent. There's an awful lot of barriers with this, especially when we think Gatsby Benchmark is that work experience. And I say it doesn't have to be that. But again, potential curriculum time missed, is a huge one. Resources to implement provision, so things like buses, time, staff out of lessons and things like that. Access to employers to support the provision of experiences as well. So some schools perhaps don't have that network of businesses or employers that can support them with this. And hopefully today I'll give you some ideas on how potentially you can increase that network. Bit of stereotypical thinking as well. And then finally, we've obviously got COVID-19 to think about as well. And that maybe your work experience is your kind of one thing that you can really target towards Gatsby Benchmark 6, and perhaps that's been cancelled or postponed. In fact, if you do it, it will be, I'm sure. But I think that represents some opportunity potentially as well for us. So we'll look at that in a bit of detail later on. Okay, so we're going to look at kind of a scenario really and break it down a little bit in terms of how we would maybe tackle this situation. So for a lot of people, work experience has been cancelled. Gatsby 6 is an area we want to improve. Where do I start? Where do we look at first? And I think I wanted to allude to this slide here that Debbie highlighted on her presentation a couple of weeks back. And that is really just a model that you can follow. There's lots of models of continuous improvement out there, but this is one that the Careers and Enterprise Company have pitched to us. And I think it does help when you look at breaking something down like a Gatsby benchmark and putting something in place to help you improve one particular aspect. And I think, where would I start with this? And I think it's probably looking at all your stakeholders. So who do you need to get on your side that can allow you to make progress on this benchmark? We know that through COVID, curriculum time is likely to be really squeezed. Core subjects are going to get the bulk of attention. So how can you sort of build a little team within your institution potentially that you can sort of push this forward and try and improve it? And through this little scenario, we'll try and work through each of those points really to try and help you build a case. You might have some ideas on how you might want to try and tackle Gatsby Benchmark 6, but ultimately you need to have the support of the individuals around you. So some of those stakeholders could be a head teacher, SLT. Rachel Green delivered a really good session last week on a link governor. Now, if you need someone on your side, that might be somewhere you look to before you even look at engaging your other kind of stakeholders and people you want on your team, if you like. Enterprise coordinator, enterprise advisor. You could have a parent, student on there as well. Subject leads. So that's all some things to think about. And I think that if I was looking at this as a careers leader, that's probably where I would start. I would try and get a team of people around me that are keen to support. And who are those people that I need to try and identify that I need on my side. Next, I think it's important that we identify what is the purpose, or what do we want our experience of work to be within our school. And I've put a couple of resources on here for you as well. I think it's important to understand why we were doing something, why we're doing Gatsby Benchmark 6, why we offering experiences of the workplace, what do we want to try and achieve to, again, help us try and build almost that business case to SLT to say that as a school, we need to do something around this particular benchmark. Because that's ultimately what you're trying to do, is you're trying to build a case to your seniors to say this is something that we need to put in place to help our students. And there are a couple of good guides there that I've linked to that you can have a look at on the back of the session. So just some ideas here. We've got increased understanding of the world of work and specific industries, increased level of confidence, maturity, employability, skill development, educational outcomes, and career outcomes. And I've had a couple of conversations with careers leaders over the last few days, and we think that collectively, this potentially might be more important than it ever has been, because you're going to have a group of students potentially coming back in September that might be, really unmotivated, and what is going to give them that direction to re-engage with education as well. And it could be something like Gatsby Benchmark 6 and getting them out into the world of work. And we know the world of work is going to be changing. And I think it's important that we try and, bridge that gap as best we can between work and education. I think it's going to be important for those students perhaps at a disadvantage as well, because the likelihood is that that gap between the higher achievers and the lower achievers is going to extend as well. So just a question there that, what planned impact do you want from your Gatsby Benchmark 6 or experiences through the workplace? What do you want to try and achieve? And I think that's a really worthwhile question to potentially ask yourself from that as well. Just something else to think about, or a few areas and points to consider really when planning to look at your impact. And this might be something that you work together. Let's say you've identified your key individuals you want on your team. It could be that you have like a mini steering group meeting amongst those individuals to decide as a team what you want to take forward and what you want to do in relation to your impact. So defined outcomes is always really, really important. It means you can measure the impact of your proposal potentially, or your experiences of work. They shouldn't be done for the sake of it. Be clear on what you want your students to achieve as well, and in the ways it will help students be prepared for the world of work. And again, consider how your program links to school priorities and support students. So that's really key, again, to get the buy-in of the likes of the head. It's getting that buy-in to the school priorities and making sure that everything's linked together. Now, this might be something that you want to get to. I'm not saying that this is going to be a quick fix, so it's not going to be something you are able to get to overnight. But try as best you can to plan progressively. This could work for your school. There might be some in there that do work, might be some that you can't envisage happening. But these are some of the things that other schools are doing, not particularly within Lincolnshire. But again, school as a workplace being one. How can you explore that as a potential opportunity for an experience in the workplace? You've got the local community. There's quite a few resources in relation to youth social action. So are there any community groups locally that you can tap into to potentially offer something as a workplace? Employer-led challenges. I know quite a few of you do enterprise challenges. Could you look to incorporate a workplace visit in there? Again, I know that student groups might be up to 150 students a year, so it might be really difficult to offer that to all students. But again, offering something to some students is going to be better than not having anything at all. So there's quite a good example that I'll show you later on of that one. A series of sites in a World of Work week could be one. An individual career investigation element could be kind of something you do in year 11 as well. So again, trying to build on a progressive format for your students is going to be really, really important if you want to have a really, really strong Gatsby Benchmark 6. Okay, so a bit of implementation. So I'm going to go through a few examples of things that are happening across the country, really, that have worked, and hopefully, again, you can take some of the things from this. So typically at the moment, what counts? So these are some of the things that are being delivered. An insight tour or a day out, typically hosting visit for students. You could have employer projects or challenges, and there might be a workplace visit in there as well. Job shadowing days, block placements, which is typically a work experience model. And there are also a consortium model as well. So potentially working in collaboration with a group of employers to deliver workplace experiences. And I get that a lot of those things really is going to be what's going to come out of a really strong network of employers that a school works with. And I'd really, really encourage you to as potentially a bit of a starting point, is to look at how can you as a school increase your network. And one of those things I'm going to show you today is about tapping into parents. I think parents is always one that we want to try and engage with a little bit more, and this might provide you a platform. So this is linked within the presentation. It's a bit of a campaign, really. It's a pledge campaign that really looks to try and utilize the parents as a network to try and support you as a school to deliver not only experiences of the workplace, but also engagement or Gatsby Benchmark 5 encounters with employers. So there's a whole host of resources here that you can look through. But the idea is it's a bit of a campaign, to be honest, a marketing campaign that looks to try and get parents involved with your careers education. And there's different ways that this can be launched, but I'll show you some of the resources here. So it's got a kind of a pledge overview. So it identifies the support pledge. So it asks parents to pledge their support really towards you and your careers program. And the idea is that you try and get them involved in as best you can. There's a spreadsheet on here as well, so you can capture the information that the parents that have kind of said, you know, we're happy to support. You might have different businesses involved that those parents work for. Just click this link here. You've got a poster within there as well. So you've got a good type of resource here as well. You've got a way to capture information and again extend your network as a school, so you have more businesses, more employers potentially that can work with your students. And again, by building that network of employers, you're able to effectively have and ask them for to deliver more opportunities for your students. I'll just show you the spreadsheet that comes with it very quickly. So again, you've got a spreadsheet there for sourcing the information, or the parents that effectively pledge, you know, their support to you as a school. So you could have a series of different things on here. And to be honest, it's very, very similar to how myself, Debbie, and Liz run the Give an Hour campaign, which you may have heard. We do something very similar with Give an Hour individuals. We ask them what sort of things they'd be willing to do, and they form our database, and we have you know, a really, really strong database of employers that have offered their support to schools as well. So that is a very, very quick resource there that's on the slide deck that you can have a look at as well. Something I did want to show you in addition to that is, you might be thinking, Alex, great, you've suggested all these things, but at the minute we can't even open our doors to anybody other than, you know, a very small group of students at the minute. So when I said earlier that I think there might be an opportunity around Gatsby Benchmark 6 and virtual encounters, the Careers Enterprise company have released this guide, and it's about how to score online employer engagement in Compass. So what effectively counts against Gatsby Benchmark 5 and 6. So myself, Debbie, and Liz are looking at this in a bit of detail at the minute to try and support you as best we can with providing encounters that effectively meet Gatsby Benchmark 5 and 6 through a virtual platform. So some of the things here, for example, learning outcomes are defined based on the age and needs of students. Student meets a range of people from the workplace. There is extensive two-way interaction in place, and students must perform a task. So potentially there, as long as you reach those 4 or hit those 4 learning outcomes as such, you can count something towards Gatsby Benchmark 6, which I think is really, really positive as well. So again, that is something that we're looking at to try and put something in place that employers effectively can deliver something like that for you guys as well to tap into. So it might actually make things a little bit easier potentially for your students to achieve Gatsby Benchmark 6. I'm not saying it would ever replicate or replace a really good quality work experience program or some face-to-face interaction, but you know, over the next 12 months, this might be something that you guys look to put in place within your schools. Okay, so just going to go through a couple of other models that schools have used to try and tackle this benchmark. One of these is in Tees Valley, and they use a curriculum-based model, so they almost pair up each curriculum area with an employer, almost like I suppose a little bit like mentoring, I guess, for a subject area. But it's mainly through the option subject teachers. So relevant employers set a brief for students of that subject, which meets the curriculum learning outcomes, which set within the context of their business. So it's about a partnership really between potentially your subject lead or your, let's say for example, geography. You might have a particular tutor in there that is really keen to try and do more, and you effectively try and match them up with an employer that can support that subject area. Now, in some areas, they've even extended it, not just offering placements and things like that, but actually looking at schemes of learning and seeing how the employer can actually have more impact in the curriculum by providing some guidance on, well, have you thought about adding this into the curriculum in this particular way, just to add some additional depth as well. So again, it does rely on the school having a network of employers, but at the same time, myself, Debbie and Liz are there to support you to try and build that network as well. So there's a few things here. Option groups will then undertake a visit to the employer during the project, learning about roles. And again, this doesn't necessarily, in this time, necessarily have to be set up as an external visit. It could be done, online potentially as well. So another one here, we've got a business clinic. So an SMEs or startup models are being supported. So schools and colleges, providers, they offer key workshops for students. Students are linked in groups to an employer, undertake a research project on that particular organization, and students are then introduced to the employer at school as well. And again, there's a kind of the case study there to find out a bit more about how that's working. And again, it might be something that you can take forward as a school. I mentioned this briefly earlier, so kind of a world of work week. So I know a few people do run days, and this one's done as a week. Again, you might not be able to free up that time, but there are some aspects here that you could potentially take forward into a day. So again, it revolves around a challenge. There's a workplace visit in there. There's reflection time. So again, these guys have really looked at tackling the learning outcomes and making sure those students get plenty from it. Yeah, that's that one. And then we've got a traditional work experience model, which again, I know a lot of you run a traditional model. But I think these have highlighted a number of organizations. I think it looks like it's a slightly smaller school than some of the ones we have in Lincolnshire, because they've only got a number of different placement providers. But again, that's something there that they're offering, and they also do some internal work experience as well. So are there any opportunities that you can look at internally that might offer some opportunities to students as well? And just something else I wanted to point out, because a few of my schools have or previously are starting to relook at a traditional work experience model. And again, where to start with that and setting that up is quite a challenge. So on the Tees Valley Careers website, there is actually quite an extensive toolkit that can support you with setting things up, around the safeguarding element, evaluation. So there is some good practice out there around that work experience toolkit as well, in terms of setting that up. So hopefully that was a very quick tour of some different resources there and different things and things to think about. So we're going to look a little bit now at impact, just for the last sort of 10 minutes or so. And I think that is really, really important. So when we go back to that scenario and you're looking at where you're starting and bringing, all those people involved together to help develop something, it's going to be really, really important that you collect some good quality analysis, I suppose, on the back of it to showcase those people that, hopefully have said, what, yeah, go ahead with this particular plan. You're going to need to showcase afterwards, the learning from it. So some questions here just to think about: how will your learning development be captured? How will learning and development of students be shared with the school community? I don't think that's something typically we're very good at, is really celebrating those really positive stories. And I think that's really important, and capturing that and making sure that, again, you're celebrating not just the development of the student, but also the support from the employer as well. Because again, employers talk to each other a lot, and if you can create a really positive relationship with a few employers, they're gonna advocate you as a school to work with as well, because there is an awful lot in this for employers as well. And I think that's something we do forget. Employers are always looking for the next, are looking at talent and trying to identify talent early. There are a number of sectors that have skills shortages, and they are really looking to try and promote their industries to students as well. So this is a real hot topic for employers as well, and they do want to support you. So again, how do we measure impact? How will you measure the key learning? How will you evidence that students have met the key learning objectives? And how will you measure that students have developed employability skills as well? So again, some really challenging questions there. But again, that is where I would start, is forming that group of people that I think can really support me with this. It's important that you don't work on this alone. You need people to help you. And looking at some of those questions as a group, you will get to a point where you come out of that, you get some really good things that you can put in place to make sure that you're measuring. Tracking of provision as well. It's really important to capture the experiences that are happening, but not just inside your remit, in your institution, but outside as well. Social action volunteering does occur. Are you aware of the students that do some volunteering, sports leadership as well? And I think that all contributes towards your overall understanding of what the students are getting from the experiences of work as well. I know in a couple of weeks I'm doing a webinar on Compass Plus. I know Janet last week mentioned that it's important that students log and reflect, but I think Compass Plus is a tool for you as a careers leader to help track the activities that are going on. So if you're not engaged with Compass Plus yet, and you've not sort of registered to update, I suggest you get involved with it really. And we'll be running a webinar on that in a couple of weeks, because it is a really, really positive tool to help you track, monitor, and evaluate to some extent your careers provision. Okay, just to wrap up, kind of going back really to that kind of group of individuals. I think if I was looking at this from, if I was tackling this as a school, how would I go about it? I think it's really, really important that to make a case and to have some backing from individuals that we think can support us to take a model forward. And I think it is almost right in a business case for those individuals that have worked in business and other institutions. It's right in a proposal. What is the outcomes of the proposal that you're making? How is it going to impact all those other aspects of schooling and education? What will you need from the senior leadership team? And how will you feedback on the impact? I think that is really, really important. And to almost suggest that there's a problem, let's say that you go and present your Compass data and say that Gatsby Benchmark 6 is an issue, go with solutions with that as well. This is a particular area of concern for us as a school. However, I've almost solved that for you by this particular proposal, especially if you can get a lot of other stakeholders involved, a couple of businesses. As I say, myself, Debbie and Liz, we can certainly help you in building a case for you to try and move something forward with Gatsby Benchmark 6 as well. So hopefully that has been useful. Really, really quick. There was things in there that I wanted to cover, but didn't have time. So there are some notes in the slides and things as well. Resources, there's obviously the career strategy. Careers and enterprise company are always updating their resource section. There's lots of support on there for you. But I'd also stress that as big a resource as anything is each other. Really reach out to each other in terms of careers leaders. You all do fantastic work. You're all to some extent undervalued. I think your role is massive within institutions. And it is really, really important that we try as best we can to work together. And I think this, confident choices is a really, really good starting point for us to do that, because, a number of people is louder than just one voice as well. And if we can share our work and share all our positive ways of delivering these benchmarks, I think, you know, collectively across Lincolnshire, the careers provision is only going to get better. So lots of resources on the Careers and Enterprise Company website. And also, if you aren't already signed up to the Careers Leader newsletter, make sure you sign up, because it, you know, I think it's once every couple of weeks they send out a Careers Leader newsletter. There's lots of resources in there. A lot of the time, some of the stuff that I've sent out has been on the back of this particular email, or I'm circulating things that are on it just to re-highlight it as well. So it is a really, really good resource. So other than that, I think pretty good time, 35 minutes, not too bad. Hopefully I didn't go too quick, but we've got time for questions. So I'll just stop sharing my screen. So, I think Debbie's on it by the look of it. Debbie's on the questions. Yeah, Leslie's mentioned some great resources. There are some great organizations out there to support you with this as well. And I suppose, again, that could be the one thing you take from the webinar today, is that, you know, try and get as many people to support you as possible. You know, your STEM ambassadors have a great program there. Build relationships, I think, is the really, really important thing. And that's not just with external people and businesses, organizations to help you, but it's internally as well. And I think that's it, isn't it? You know, often we're put to one side, and I know lots of people already, because of the COVID situation, of careers has taken a backward step or a back seat for kind of safeguarding and core curriculum stuff. But when that happens, things don't move forward. And I think it is important to almost try and elevate your position within your school and your institution. And to do that, you need other people to help and support you as well. So, you know, use myself, Debbie and Liz, all the other organisations under the Confident Choices banner to help you do that as well. If you're not already set up with an enterprise advisor, definitely recommend that, because that, again, that straight away gives you somebody that you can bounce ideas off, as well as you know, one of your enterprise coordinators. So yeah, if there's not anything else, Debbie, is kind of all the questions been answered, or is there anything particular that you want me to pick up on?
Hi, Alex. No, I think pretty much answered. There's a couple of things that have popped up that if the three of us, Alex and Liz and myself, just if we have a natter about, there's a couple of bits and bobs, but no, I think pretty much all answered. It was really good, by the way, really good.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Hopefully everyone took something from it. That was the aim, just to take at least one thing. So, all right, guys, well, we'll conclude it. I think we've got Alison Webb on next, which by the sound of it is really, really interesting looking webinar in terms of kind of stereotypes, really, which is very, very relevant, I suppose, with the recent stuff that's been going on the news and stuff as well. So hopefully you'll be staying around to join for the next one at 11. Thanks, everybody.